On today's show, we are officially a quarter of the way into the NBA season for the Cavs. There's a lot to love about this team. Let's talk about the things that the Cavaliers have done best so far this season on today's Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review and be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure they're subscribed as well. The show is also available on YouTube. So if you're watching this video right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show, of course, is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. The Cleveland Cavaliers have now played more than 25% of the basketball they will be playing in the regular season. That sounds crazy to say, but it's true. They're 21 games into an 82-game season, so we are at the quarter pole. It has gone by incredibly fast. It feels like there have been a lot of basketball games jammed into not a lot of time. I mean, as I record this, it's the evening of December 2nd. As you're listening to this, it's December 3rd, most likely. So really, it's been about 6.5 weeks since the season started, maybe even a little bit less than that, like 5.5 weeks since the season started. And there's been a lot of basketball that the Cavs have played in that stretch, but there's been a lot to like. Obviously, they are 18-3. They've been the best team in basketball in terms of record. They've been one of the best teams in basketball, certainly the best team in basketball at times by just about every metric you look at. So there is a lot of things to take away from this start. And one of the things that Kenny Atkinson said, I believe it was last week, that teams tend to be more of the team they are at the start of the season than who they become as the season ebbs and flows throughout. So he does think that the beginning of the season is a pretty good indicator as to whether or not you are a championship contender. That is kind of how I took that. And the Cavs have shown, I think, that they are that type of team. They are a championship contending team. So today I want to talk about how, like what has gone well for them. And the thing that sticks out to me, there are two things that jump out. And I flipped a coin. So I'm going to start with Darius Garland here because he's been, and I spent so much time this summer talking with guests here, talking just to you guys here, about how I was buying into Darius Garland as a bounce back candidate for this Cavs team because last year was such a disaster for him, but I still had belief that there was an all-star caliber player wearing number 10 for the Cavs. He just didn't show up last year for a number of reasons that I really don't think you can blame him for. Well, this year, that all-star caliber player has not only shown up, but he's had, I think so far, the best start to a season that he's had in his career. So what I did was I went back and I looked at what his numbers looked like during that all-star campaign. Because yes, Darius Garland has been an all-star before. So go back a few years. He was an all-star. He deserved to be an all-star. His per 36 numbers. Now his total numbers are a little off because he's playing fewer minutes right now, which is something I will get to coming up a little bit later on in the show. But his per 36 numbers right now are far and away better than they were the year he made the All-Star team. They're far and away better than the first year he was paired with Donovan Mitchell when I thought he deserved to be an All-Star that season as well. His totals were a little bit down because his usage was down. But so far this season, Darius Garland is averaging 24 points and 8 assists per 36 minutes while having a career low in turnovers. That to me says that he has not only bounced back from what happened last year, but he's having the best year of his career. He's grown, I think, in so many different areas. One area is the three-point shot. Yeah, he's shooting 45%. I don't know if it's going to keep up quite that high all season long. That's a pretty lofty number to be at. I think he's capable of it, but if he finishes shooting like 42%, if that drops a little bit, That's not something to be embarrassed by. Like, that's still a really good number. But the thing with the 3-point shot that I look at is attempts. He's taking almost 8 3-point attempts per 36 minutes, which I think is right about where he should be. You could convince me maybe he should be even a little bit higher than he is right now, but I think he's in a really good space. That is more than 1.2 3-point attempts more per 36 minutes than his career high previously. His career high previously was 6.7. Now it's 7.9. That is an awesome place. That's a big reason why we're seeing Darius Garland have so much success. I think part of it is also he's spending more time playing with Jarrett Allen, and Evan Mobley is playing with Donovan Mitchell, who I will talk about coming up in just a second here. But I think it's the fact that he's taking more looks from beyond the arc, which is something that this organization has wanted him to do because they have recognized just how good of a shooter he is, how good of a shooter he is from beyond the arc. And he's somebody that if he's not taking threes at a high volume, I don't know that you're getting the most out of him as a basketball player. And I think that what we have seen this year from him on both ends of the floor, and I talked a lot on yesterday's show about Darius Garland as a defender with what he did against Jason Tatum in that game against Boston on Sunday night. But what he's done on the offensive end of the floor, this is the blueprint for him to be an all-star. I did say before the season, and I think I was wrong about this, I did say before the season, I didn't think he could make an all-star team because I thought it'd be too difficult to do while playing alongside Donovan Mitchell. Like, it's just a really hard thing to have two guys that essentially play the same position on the same team make an all-star team. For it to happen, Darius Garland needed to look like this, and the Cavs needed to be as good as they are. Both those things have happened. Like, we should be talking as soon as all-star conversation picks up, which I would imagine is going to be in the next 3 or 4 weeks. We're going to start talking about guys who could make all-star teams. When that happens, Darius Garland should be on that list. I don't think there are very many guards that are more deserving than the spot on an all-star team than Darius Garland. He's been fantastic so far this season. He deserves every bit of credit. The Cavs, I think, deserve a lot of credit for bringing this out of him. Kenny Atkinson deserves credit for formulating the offense in such a way that Darius Garland has bought into the extent that he does, but no one deserves more credit for this than Darius. He's played excellent. He's been spectacular. He's been an all-star. And that has been a big reason why the Cavs have the best record in basketball through the first quarter of the season because of his play. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about that I made sure I wanted to hit in this open segment was Evan Mobley, because to me, that is another big difference between last year and this year. And that is one of the biggest things that stands out to me throughout these first 21 games that the Cavs have played throughout the first quarter of the season. Last year, I thought Mobley was fine. The injuries were an issue. I thought he was fine. This year, I think he's taken a pretty big step forward. Now, it's not always going to show up in the box score. It is showing up in the box score to some extent this year. His numbers are up. He's taking more shots than he's ever taken before. He's getting to the free throw line more frequently than at any point in his career. And he is shooting a career high in free throw percentage, which I do think is important, that he's right around 83%. And defensively, like, he just continues to get better. He is already an all-world defender. He will be on an all-defense team. There's zero question about that. He's going to be in consideration to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think year in and year out. I don't know if he's ever going to win one. I don't know how many he will win if he does, but he's going to be in consideration every year because he's that level of defender. But I think he looks so much stronger, particularly on offense. One of the criticisms that I've had of Evan is throughout his career prior to this season, this does not apply to this season, but prior to this season, was that he looked like such a strong player defensively, where he played with force and he played with aggression. And that never translated to the other end of the floor. That didn't make its way to when the Cavs were on offense. That has this year. And it's something as simple as, and there's not a metric for this. If there is, I'm not aware of it. But just watching him play, it looks like when he's dunking the basketball, he's dunking it with more ferocity than he had been in the past. He's imposing his will. I think the thing that does speak to that is probably that free throw metric, probably how frequently he's getting to the line. That's probably the one stat that says he's playing stronger because he's going through contact and he's drawing fouls. It's probably the one thing that does speak to that. I like that his three-point attempts are slightly up. I expected them to be a little bit more up than they were. But overall, Evan Mobley has been so good for this team. Defensively, there's another thing I've noticed with him that is worth talking about that I think is not a huge difference from last year, but it's been pretty noticeable what other teams think of Evan Mobley as a defender. I'll tell you what that is. Plus, talk about Kenny Atkinson and the job he's done so far for the Cavs next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is my go-to ticket marketplace. Game Time should be your go-to ticket marketplace. Why is Game Time my go-to ticket marketplace? Because they've got everything you need. If you want to go to a show, a concert, or you want to go watch basketball, they've got tickets for every event that you can think of. I love the Game Time app for a couple of reasons. One, I don't like being surprised at the last minute with taxes and fees. I want to know what I'm going to pay, when I'm going to pay it. So with Game Time, you can toggle on that all-in pricing feature. And if you do that, you're not surprised at the last minute. I don't want to be surprised. I want clarity throughout the process. Game Time provides me with that. The other thing Game Time has that I really do like is they will show you what your seat looks like, what the view of your seat looks like, I should say. So if you're buying a seat in a certain section, you want to know what center court looks like, Game Time will show you your view from the seat you might buy right there within the Game Time app. So what you have to do, if you want to be taken care of the way I want to be taken care of when I'm buying tickets, is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, that's LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas, states just like that. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Like I said, over 10 million users. You can be one of those. Sign up today. They do put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. They also offer Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this season. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win, right? That sounds awesome. You don't even have to win, just $50 instantly when you play $5 to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So what you need to do is download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. So the one last thing I wanted to get to with Evan Mobley as far as what he's doing better, I don't want to say differently, but better. Or I guess it's something I've noticed the way the league looks at him. And I've noticed this throughout the season, but I think it's been pretty apparent the last 3 games the Cavs have played. So the 2 against the Hawks and then Sunday against Boston. But the Cavs will switch Evan Mobley onto anybody. They have no worries about him defending 1 through 5. That's been very clear. And that's not new this year. They've felt that way for a while. When he doesn't switch, it says more about the other defender in the action than it does about him. But there were so many instances in Wednesday's game against Atlanta, in Friday's game against Atlanta, where he got switched on to Trae Young. And Trae Young is obviously a really, really good player. He's a very quick player. He's a player that likes to have the basketball in his hands, is content to attack off the dribble to anybody, try to get to the free throw line, maybe grift a foul or two. But that's what he's going to try and do. That's who Trae Young is. So Evan Mobley switches out onto Trae Young, and what happens? Trae Young wants to get the ball out of his hands. He does not want to attack Evan Mobley off the dribble. Now, normally when you see a guard of Trae Young's stature defended by a big guy like Evan Mobley, they're going to want to isolate that player. They're going to want to create space on a step back because that defender can't move their feet well enough, or they're going to want to try and get past them and get to the rim, or they're going to want to try and draw a foul. None of those things. Trae Young wanted no part of Evan Mobley. And then fast forward to Sunday, we saw Jason Tatum get Evan Mobley on switches sometimes. Sometimes the Cavs just put Mobley on Tatum. That was another one. Now, Tatum was a little bit better at trying to attack Mobley, but there were several instances during that game on Sunday where he's just like, you know what? No, I'm not going at this guy because he's that good of a defender. You're starting to see that more and more. As you watch Cavs games, that's something to keep an eye out for because it's something that I've noticed, and I think it says a lot about how teams across the NBA view Evan Mobley as a defender. If all NBA caliber players, which both, I believe Trae Young's made an all NBA team. I know Jason Tatum obviously has been first team all NBA. If those guys, the Evan Mobley switched onto them and they're like, you know what? I'm good. Going to pass the ball here. That says a ton about who Evan Mobley is as a defender. That I think is one of the highest compliments that an opposing team can pay, is that Evan Mobley is so good defensively, they're willing to get the ball out of their best player's hands because they don't think that's the best thing they can do. It's very rare that a team that has a superstar wants to get the ball out of his hands because of who's defending him. We've seen that with Evan Mobley. One of the other things that stood out to me as I move on from Mobley, I want to talk about Kenny Atkinson because the way he's coached this team has been very drastically different from the way it's been coached in the past. And yes, we can talk about offense. We can talk about how maybe they do need to improve defensively. And I will talk about that coming up in just a bit. But the thing that stands out to me is the way he manages this roster, the way minutes are managed, the way the bench plays. Those things really have stood out to me in the first quarter of the season. I think this stat is pretty telling. So last year, now Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland were not among, they didn't qualify for leaders in the NBA because they didn't play enough minutes. Donovan only played 55 games. Garland, I don't remember how many games he played, but he didn't play enough to qualify as like league leader. So you do have to, it's skewed a little bit. But last season, Donovan Mitchell was 19th in the NBA in minutes per game. He was, I believe, at 35.3 minutes per game. Darius Garland was 51st. This year, now Donovan is still leading the Cavs in minutes. This year, he ranks 69th in minutes per game in the NBA. He has seen his minutes cut by right around 4 minutes per game. And I think that's been one of the best things for him and for this team. So he's leading the Cavs, and there are 68 players in the NBA that are playing more minutes per game than he is. Evan Mobley is second at 72nd in the NBA. Darius Garland is at 79th, and Jarrett Allen is at 87th. So to have that be no one in your starting five is in the top 50 in minutes played per game. That is awesome because the Cavs are going to get to a point where those guys need to play more. That will happen. It'll happen in April, May, and maybe June. But for them to be able to get to that point, limiting the minutes now is a really, really, really important thing that Kenny Atkinson is doing. And with that, Kenny has relied on the bench so much more than they did in the past. Last year, the Cavs were 20th in minutes played by the bench. This year, and it's early, they're 6th. Kenny has used a much longer bench. And I guess the thing that really stands out to me about this is the roster hasn't changed. Like, sure, Ty Jerome was not available last year because of injury, and he's been available this year. So that is a difference. But Kenny has been so much more willing to go deeper into the bench, to give guys an opportunity, to not just have the minutes flow be dominated by starters. And that I think it has paid dividends already. I think it'll pay more dividends too as time goes on in a couple of ways. One, the starters are going to be fresher when it matters more. This is going to be something that I think can prevent injuries a little bit. And you can't take injuries out of the game, but I think it can prevent injuries a little bit to guys like Donovan Mitchell, who we have seen have some wear and tear issues. And two, the extended play during the regular season for players coming off the bench is something that's going to build up confidence. I'm not saying Ty Jerome's going to play at an all-star level forever. I think he slumped the past couple of games. As I record this, he's questionable for Tuesday's game against Washington with an injury. But his confidence is going to be higher than it's ever been because of the opportunity he's been given off the bench. Sam Merrill, who really struggled to crack the rotation last year, regular part of the rotation. Jalen Tyson, starting to get some minutes. Not a ton, but he's starting to get an opportunity. Those are the moments that when those guys are called upon, when these games really matter in the postseason, they'll be able to draw back to how much they played during the regular season. And that is something that is very, very important. So that is one of the things that has stood out and been, I think, one of the best things Kenny's on. Like, we can talk about how he's changed what they do offensively and how great it's been for this team. But ultimately, I think the fact that he's willing to trust his entire roster has been something that the metric is, bench minutes played, but it's something that I do think has started paying dividends and will pay even more down the road. So what needs to get better with the Cavs to win a title? Well, it's defense, and we're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So the month of December is here. It is the holiday season. It is a time to be cozy. Maybe you want to hang out by the fire. Maybe you want to watch the snowfall, which if you're in Northeast Ohio, I know, especially on the east side. If you're on the west side, no. But if you're on the east side, I know you've been watching the snowfall for a few days now. And there are different ways to stay cozy during these cold winter months up north here. For some people, like I said, just wrapping up by the fire, just enjoying watching the snowfall, maybe have some hot chocolate. That sounds good right now. But another way to feel cozy during the season is therapy. It's a great way to bring yourself some comfort, and that comfort never goes away, even when the season changes, because it's not going to be winter forever, even if it might feel like it at time in Northeast Ohio. And if you are looking to try therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do, go fill out a brief questionnaire, and you can get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA. And you can get 10% off your first month. Give therapy a try and visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the Locked On Cavs podcast. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure they're subscribed. And if you're looking for more written Cavaliers content, check out my Substack, The Inside Shot, running a Cyber Weekend sale going through Tuesday night. So you can get it for 20% off if you sign up before midnight comes Tuesday night. If you want to read about the Cavs every day, I got you covered. If you want to listen to the Cavs every day, well, you're in the right place. So the Cavs have not been good enough defensively so far this season. They started off the year really well. The month of November, they were 20th in defense. The defensive slippage, which has been something that Kenny Atkinson has talked about, has been real. Now, I will say, I think the last couple of games, the second game against Atlanta and the game they played against Boston on Sunday, I thought the Cavs actually played well on the defensive end of the floor. They need to continue that. We'll see if they can do that against Washington and against Denver this week, but they need to be better than they have been defensively. Right now, as I record this, which is before games begin on Monday night, the Cavs sit in 11th on defense. 11th is fine. I don't think 11th is championship caliber. This is a team that believes it can win a championship this year. I also think this is a roster, considering what the roster looks like, what the starting lineup looks like, where three of the players are defense first guys in Jarrett Allen, Isaac Okoro, and a defensive player of the year caliber guy in Evan Mobley. 11th in defense is not good enough. This is a roster that should be in the top 5 defensively. Now, can they flip the switch and get there? I think they can, but this is something where I don't know that end of the floor should be a gradual build. And not every night's going to be a great defensive night. I totally get that. But I do think that they need to be better on that end than they have been. I think Sunday night in particular was a really strong defensive effort from them. And their defensive rating was even inflated a little bit because they played the foul game at the end of the game, which fine. But that needs to be a step. They need to follow that up with better defensive performances. That is going to be the thing that I have my eyes on this week, next week, really this month as a whole. Like, this is an opportunity because we know, and the offense is going to take a step back when guys don't shoot as well. And it felt like until the fourth quarter against Boston, the Cavs have been going through a team-wide shooting slump for about a week. That's going to ebb and flow as shots fall or don't. But the defensive effort shouldn't be something that does. That should be something that is more consistent than it has been. So that is the one thing that stood out to me, is not being good enough in the first quarter of the season. There's still plenty of time for it to get good enough. This roster, I still think, is a roster that should be capable of being a championship caliber defense, but they need to play like it. And I don't think that they can wait until April to do that. I'm not saying it has to happen now, but when I do a show like this, when we're halfway through the season, as opposed to a quarter of the way through the season, and I'm still talking about the defense is not being good enough or not improving, not trending in the direction that it needs to, that's when I think we might start to have some second questions as to whether or not the Cavs are capable of winning the title. That needs to be improved. I think it will be, but that is the one thing that I look and say, okay, that needs to get better. The Cavs take on Washington tonight. I think it should be a game they're favored very heavily in on FanDuel. This should be a game they win. I do believe that they have to play it on that wretched wine-colored floor, the last NBA Cup game, which of course does not matter for all intents and purposes. This is just a regular season basketball game, so we'll see if they take care of business, and then Denver on Thursday will be a very interesting game to follow. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I will talk to you tomorrow after the Cavs play the Wizards.